Welcome back. On this episode of the Branded Impact Podcast, we're joined by Cally Ingebritsen, founder of Chillax Finance, who's on a mission to take the stress and shame out of money. With 16 plus years of experience, she makes personal finance feel doable and not so damn serious when we have to talk about it. Cally, thank you so much for joining me today. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're so passionate about in your business right now?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm a financial coach, so I'm really passionate about helping people get their finances in order. I've worked in finance for nearly 2 decades, and along the way, I realized that the industry is largely pale, male, and stale, and very stuffy on top of that. So, my goal is to be a friendly face in the finance world and help people get their finances in order. Most people weren't taught much about personal finance growing up, either through their schooling or through their families or even at work. They didn't have access to any real financial advice. And so most people hit adulthood and reach a WTF moment with their finances and start looking for help because either their money is holding them back from a positive relationship with a partner, or they're not able to buy a house, or they're recovering from debt, or want to plan for a baby, or just have more fun and travel in their life. So no matter what it is, I'm there to guide people. And so, yeah, that's what I do in Chillax Finance.
I love it. So, can you tell me what made you leave? Because you were working for a corporate financial company. What drove you to leave and go out on your own?
Yeah, I worked at several finance positions before starting Chillax Finance and gained a lot of good experience. I worked for a program through the IRS for 11 tax seasons. I worked for a credit union for a while. I worked for a financial planner for a while and a few other jobs here and there. But all of them felt like very conventional and very traditional and stuffy. And I just felt that the vibe didn't really match my personality. And I felt like I was supposed to be a bit more reserved, a bit more serious about money. And that's just not my vibe. I mean, I literally named my business Chillax Finance because I want people to feel chillax with their money and feel like they have everything on lock and that their money is just chilling and that they don't have to be stressed anymore or feel shame about their finances. So, yeah, it was mostly because the industry just felt so stuffy. And I thought, gosh, if I know so much about finance. I have 3 different personal finance certificates. I have nearly 2 decades of experience. If I'm still feeling this way when I go to financial planning conventions or trainings or other meetings with other professionals, if I feel this way and I'm a colleague, I can only imagine how a potential client might feel being intimidated or not welcomed and being their full selves, especially for people who aren't the traditional financial planning client. Because most people in the financial industry only work with people who have 2 million or above in assets already saved. Statistically, most people reach out for financial advice when they're only 5 years away from retirement. So
Wow.
the industry just skews very rich and quite old. So for those of us who are younger or are still learning to manage our money, there aren't a lot of folks out there who are focused on people who are kind of earlier in their financial journey. So that's what made me want to start my own thing.
I love that. So, guess give me a little bit since it's so skewed in the opposite direction. When is a good time for someone to reach out to you? Like, what are some common questions that you're finding they're asking? So, this would be like okay, I don't have to wait until I have X amount of money or some sort of status to reach out.
In order for me to help someone, they already need to have a source of income. So I can't, I'm not a career counselor. I can't help you find a job, let's say. But if you have income coming in, then I can help you organize it. So most people reach out to me when, they're making decent money or they just got a raise or they're looking ahead to a goal or they're recovering from something like a divorce or a big change in their life, but they still have money coming in. So that's kind of requirement number one. But then also, I would say requirement number two is just being tired of feeling stuck, with your money and realizing that it is possible to improve, but you just don't know how. And that's where I come in because I've worked with, at this point, probably thousands of clients since I started in 2009 working with people and their money. And so I've seen so many different scenarios by now. And what that means for my clients is they get access to different strategies that I know work well with people over time consistently. So yeah, if someone has money coming in and they don't know what the heck to do with it, I would be a good person to help them, guide them.
I love that. And I think I loved your motto that we were talking kind of pre show about because there's such a negative connotation to money. And then I think a lot of times it's based on upbringing. A lot of it's based on, and at least in my own experience and the research that I have done being in the entrepreneurship world, it's like you just have there's so many different connotations and experiences around debt and what's a healthy debt and what's a not healthy debt. And then the shame that comes in or expectations or those pieces. And so I love the fact that you've taken this approach where you're like, listen, you don't have to be so serious about money. Like it doesn't have, and I think statistically, it's like one of the leading causes of divorce. I think there's different
Absolutely.
things that like it's just such a negative piece. So you're like, and your Chillax Finance. I'm like, I mean, can it come through any more branded that like this is a different approach to finance than the normal game? But you really do have a mission to prove that you can have conversations around money and have a plan and figure out how it to be okay. And I still think it's when you said it, I was like, I even had to have you say it again. I was like, what did you say? To be not so damn serious about it. And I think that really made me chuckle. So I think that's
Yes. Yes, what we were saying before the show started is that, of course, money is so serious. It's a critical part of people's lives. It really runs through as a current in nearly every aspect of our lives. But even though it's so serious, do we have to be so serious when we're talking about it? That's what frustrates me, is that the industry treats it so like stuffy, and it just turns people away, and people think, like you were saying, like they have to have everything on lock before they even reach out for help, and that's just not my approach. I really want to help people get heading in the right direction. So it's as if the industry really only focused on, if it were like sports or something, this metaphor just came to mind. It's as if traditional financial planners were only working with clients who were the equivalent of, Olympians who already had such an elite state already and had years and years of training under their belt, when most people just need help, going for a 30-minute walk each day, getting some movement, or like adding some fruits and veggies into your diet, like, and having that accountability to take those first few steps. Like I would rather help people with those first few steps than reaching like peak status with their money. And that's the majority anyway, is most people need help with those first few steps, rather than like peak performance with your money. It's not to say if I had $1 zillion, I'm sure I'd have the exact same questions that those types of clients have, but that's not my friend's reality. That's not my family's reality. That's not, frankly, most of the American public's reality. So I'd rather, help people get money 101 and 201 squared away so that hopefully they can start thinking more long term for 301 and 401.
I love that. So give me a little bit in layman's terms because we're talking about a different level. And so I think commonly known when you're thinking about financial planning and all that stuff, you're thinking like, okay, am I planning for retirement? Am I contributing? And you mentioned statistically people don't even really start thinking about it until 5 years before retirement when they're like, I see retirement on the horizon. Now what do I need to do? Which, in my opinion, at that point, you have little time. You should be thinking about what are the moves that you're making when you're younger so that you're not trying to scramble and create a situation or realize that you're not going to retire at 65 because you didn't put the plans into place before. But when you say
Mm-hmm.
financial 101, like what are some of the things that you're kind of walking people through?
Yes. So 101 for me would be things like understanding how to manage your income. So creating essentially a plan for how much of your money is going to go where, essentially a budget. Although unfortunately that word has a negative connotation, I like to flip it, and it's not about restriction, because that's usually what people think. It's more a tool that helps us make smart decisions. We can't just cross our fingers and hope we're going to reach our financial goals. We actually need a plan. Okay. So a budget is a positive thing, because there's typically 3 or 4 main categories that I teach my clients about of how to divvy their income. So the first is going to be your bills. As adults, we have to cover our basics. Saving for emergencies is definitely a part of money 101, is having a rainy day fund. And then debt, if we have debt. And then fun. Most people don't plan for fun. Okay. So those would be the 4 main categories. Again, bills, savings, debt, if you have it, as well as fun. So money 101 is making a plan to cover those 4 things and trying to have them be relatively balanced in the personal finance world. And I can't take credit for this, but the best practice is to aim for what's called a 50-30-20 budget. I'm not sure if
Okay.
you've heard of that concept, but
I
nobody's
don't think
budget
I've
is
I don't think I've heard of
no
50-30-20.
yeah, it's a common budgeting strategy out there. And I reiterate to all of my clients that nobody's budget is going to be exactly 50-30-20, but 50 plus 30 plus 20 are percents that add up to 100%. And so the goal is to divide your take home pay across those 3 categories. So 50% would be for your bills. So you want to try to keep your rent, your groceries, your insurance, your gas, your phone, your Wi-Fi, all of your must pays, whatever those are for you, like things that if you lost your job or your income, you would still find a way to pay somehow because you simply have to. That would be what you would be your necessities. And if you total those up, you want that to be about 50% or less, if at all possible, of your monthly take home pay. 30% can be for flexible or fun spending, so whatever you need or want in that given month. And then 20% should be divvied towards your emergency savings or another savings goal if you already have taken care of your rainy day fund, and or debt if you have debt. So even if you're still knocking out debt, a key thing to know is that you absolutely need to put some towards emergency savings, because paying off your debt is just really catching up from the past, but emergency savings functions as debt prevention. So
Okay.
if we have debt, this is a common thing. Maybe some listeners out there will see themselves in this, but in my experience, a lot of people, when they have debt, they focus almost exclusively at wanting to pay off that debt because it's giving them anxiety. They know it's growing each month. It's stressing them out. And that's awesome and noble that people want to pay off their debt. However, we need to balance that with also stashing a bit aside, because if we don't have a little bit of a rainy day fund, at least to pull from, it's not an if, it's a when. There's going to be another unexpected expense. And if all we've been doing is paying off our debt and something else then pops up, we don't have somewhere else to pull from but reaching for our credit card again, or asking friends and family for debt, or in dire situations, getting a payday loan, things like that, which is all debt, right? So yes, pay off the debt, but also balance that with even a smidge of putting some aside for emergencies. So for example, I'll do the math for my clients, and let's say their minimum monthly debt payments work out to be 18% of their income. Okay, we'll rock with that. But then we'll put, of their 20% that should go towards savings and debt, we'll still put about 2% of their income towards emergency savings per month. So at least they have a bitty baby little cushion to pull from when another thing pops up that they weren't expecting.
Okay.
So
I
all
mean,
of
it's
this, learning these skills for me is money 101.
okay. I love that. And then you can shift into, once you've got that under control and under lock, then you move into a 201, and then you can keep, it's like locking in some sort of, it's creating habits, right? So I think we see this too, even in health and like working out. It's like, I say it too, even on the social media or like branding side. Like, listen, if you haven't posted on social media ever, and then you decide you want to start posting 7 days a week, that's really a huge undertaking to take on. And you're going to see yourself fail very quickly. So start by something that you can manage. So you're saying Money 101, let's start by getting you in the habit of living within your means and figuring out how we can start saving money. And then I guess at some point when the debt comes down, then you get to use that money to start shifting in other directions. And then if you want to know more about 201 and 301 and all that stuff, you have to have a side conversation with Cally, because I think this will turn into a full finance podcast episode. But I want to kind of shift gears a little bit. And I appreciate your desire to create a space for people, because I think if you can learn this early on, and sometimes, like for us, for myself and my husband, we're trying to teach our kids a little bit different about money and taking on a different approach. And then I know, even as growing up through phases, I'm like, man, there's things I wish I would have done differently. Like, we paid off some debt really fast just because we could, but then it was like 0% interest, or it was something where like we didn't really need to have paid it off so fast. We could have probably spread that out and maybe invested in something a little different. And so looking back, I'm like, man, now I know, wish I would have known that sooner. But I love that you're trying to make this a non taboo subject, because if you can make it, all comes down to strategy. And so no matter what we're doing, if you have a plan, you can start working towards something. And if you don't have a plan, then you're just going to wake up one day and wonder, what the heck happened? If I would have known about this differently, I could have done it. But I want to shift about branding if we can. When you decided to go out on your own and you decided to create Chillax Finance, what are some of the first things that you did to start letting people know that you existed as an option?
Yeah, well, I made a website, a bitty baby website, all on my own with a website builder, and it was pretty basic. Um, and I also asked a friend who is a graphic designer to help me make a logo. And then I took an online marketing course by an online marketing woman that I like and that I followed for a long time. And then I also posted in different Facebook groups. I live in San Diego now. However, at that time, I was living in the Twin Cities. I was living in Minneapolis. So I posted on local Facebook groups there, and I started meeting up with people in person when I was figuring out what I was going to do for my business. That was the very, very, very first thing, I guess, was I posted on local Facebook groups to meet up with people, because I just knew that there's such a big gap between the traditional financial planning client or financial coaching client and who I wanted to serve. And so I was trying to find people more in my zone. So I would meet up with people at coffee shops. It was not a sustainable business model. I'm not, there's a lot that we could dive into there. I would just have people meet up with me at a coffee shop and pay me $50 a session, but there's like no contract, no commitment. I was still figuring out the flow of how I was going to help people. I didn't have a software to track my client notes, nothing. But in terms of creating a brand, after I got my feet wet, I was like, okay, girl, you need a website, you know? So I made a website. Tried to choose some brand colors. Eventually, when I got to San Diego, I also had some photos taken for my website on a good hair day. I have wavy, unruly hair, so I wake up every day, I don't know what it's going to look like. So I made sure I looked okay. So those were some of the first things I did.
Awesome. Well, looking back, is there anything that you would have done different?
Hmm. Gosh, I'm sure there's so many things. I think I would have started email marketing. That's still something that I haven't really gotten very experienced with, and I know that it's
Okay.
really critical. I've listened to a zillion podcasts about how important it is, but that's something that I've been like intimidated by. So that's something that I'm wanting to really tackle now still, honestly. So that's something I'm sure I would, if I would have started earlier, I would have a robust list of contacts and all of these things. Yeah, that's something that I wish I would have done earlier for sure.
I think it's something that gets overlooked. And I think, it's common because I hear the same story. It's like when you go to start a business, you think I need a website and I need a logo and colors. And that's honestly like the common start. And then I love that you got brand photos in because that means you put your photo on your website. And then it's that's a common piece I don't hear. So a lot of people say like when I start out, I'm going to do the logo. I'm going to start with a website. Doing it myself is so common because there's only so many funds, right? So like you do the best that you can with what you have, but then it's that email marketing piece is something that a lot of people just don't really realize. And I think I still to this day work with established brands that have got almost every other wheel covered, and they still haven't really fully leaned into email marketing yet either. And I think that's a gold mine in nurturing your clients. And I think it's a mental shift though, because it's nurturing your clients you've already worked with or trying to nurture people that came into your space that haven't become a client yet, but that way they don't forget about you because they're not always ready. Like
Hmm.
there's going to be times and there's going to be phases, and you may make an introduction, and I don't know about you, but it's happened to me. I've spoken to people and then it's been a year or two later before they've circled back, but they didn't forget. They just weren't ready. And then when they are
Hmm.
ready, they call and they're like, "Hey, listen, I remembered that we chatted. I couldn't wait to work with you. I'm ready now." But then it's been through maintaining kind of top of mind that I would pop into their inbox. And at one point I started with once a month. And then now I do email once a week, but it's something that like that's kind of falls in line with what I was talking about habits. If you haven't done it ever, committing to do one a week is a big tackle. But then if you can do once a month or once a quarter and then work to once a month and then work your cadence down, like that's a phenomenal option. So what are some of the things? So you met in person, which you said was not as sustainable. I'm assuming that's probably tied into like how much you were charging or not charging or those pieces. But tell me a little bit about the Facebook groups. How did you decide which Facebook groups to join? And how you maximize that relationship or opportunity.
Yeah, well, I'm in the queer community, and in Minneapolis, there is a very popular Facebook group called the Queer Exchange,
Okay.
where people will post about, anything LGBTQ related. I remember being in my financial planning classes, my financial coaching classes. I was taking all these classes and working these different jobs that I mentioned earlier, and just feeling a disconnect between how conventional and really, really conservative some parts of the financial world are, and then me and my friend group just being chill. So I posted in that Facebook group that just said, "Hey, I'm studying to become a financial planner. Does anybody want help with their money? You can meet me at a coffee shop for $50 a session." And from that one post, I got 250 responses.
Wow.
So I had a zillion phone calls with people, and several of them met up with me at my local coffee shop. And I didn't really know like what flow I wanted to take people through, like what I wanted the client journey to look like. So that definitely helped me with that. But a lot of people would meet for just a few sessions and then dip because they weren't really ready. They were like curious, they needed and wanted help, but they weren't really in a place to like commit to it yet. But it was a huge learning curve for me for sure. And another challenge beyond obviously charging way under what I should have, but it was still worth the experience, was that meeting in public about finance was tough because meeting at a coffee shop, I there was a few coffee shops near where I was living in St. Paul when I started meeting with people IRL, and some were so loud that like we couldn't even hear each other, which was
Right.
good because then other people couldn't hear our conversations. But then some were so quiet, like each coffee shop kind of has its own vibe. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Some were like so quiet and you could like focus and do your emails probably like with ease at a coffee shop like that, but it wasn't meant to like have a conversation like, hey Joe, how much do you have in savings right now, like what's your FICO score? You know what I mean? Like people don't want to be talking about that, like what's your highest credit card debt, like people are like, so
Right.
I would have to get there early and make sure a table was free, but then sometimes it'd be loud or too not loud enough, I don't know, so it just kind of logistically became difficult. So
That makes sense. I love how
yeah.
you reached out to a community where you felt comfortable, found people that were like-minded, and you're like, listen, and you just put it out there. Listen, I've got an offer. And I've
Yeah.
got a service and I'm here to help. Who's interested? And I know for me, I had a similar story when I decided to get into branding because I was not in branding always, but I did the same. And I posted in a entrepreneur group of moms that I was in. And I was like, hey, listen, ladies, I've got this idea. I want to try getting into branding. And I'm going to run a mini session to build my portfolio. Anybody interested? And I ran some really low offer just to get, and I was like, I'm looking for 5 women. And I think I had like 10 that reached out immediately within a couple hours like I'm interested, and I was like, oh, fun. So I think sometimes we make it too complicated. Like we overcomplicate how simple it could be by just reaching out to the group of people that are either like-minded or that are similar or that we could serve, and just letting people know that you exist and that you have an offer. Because
Totally.
building a website is fantastic, but if no one knows it's there, they're not going to find it. And so I
Hmm.
love people that have been able to maximize groups. And I actually was just talking to a client of mine. She gets on every Monday and posts in, I was shocked by it. I want to say she posted like 100 groups every Monday or like every other Monday, but her business has taken off. And it's something where she's like, yeah, I just get in and post in these groups I've identified that are like full of my target people and just let everyone know I'm here. And I'm like, it's so simple, yet we don't do that. Like we
Wow. My jaw
post on social media, right?
Totally, my jaw literally dropped when you said 100 groups, but that is, I mean, that's the way to do it. Somewhere along the way, I started connecting with different small business mentors and programs that are out there. I even worked part time for a while at the Women's Business Center of San Diego. And so I started getting connected to different resources for small business owners and things. And a mentor at one point told me the goal of any small business owner is to be in spaces where people have the problem that you can solve.
Mm,
So I think that looking back without knowing it, just simply posting in that group that I mentioned and posting in the group that you mentioned, we were both trying to show up in places where people might have a problem that we could solve. So
yeah.
yeah, I think that when you're online, that's really important. And another mentor also told me, a lot of times we learn about businesses. Like this morning, I walked to my local coffee shop and got a chai before coming to chat with you. And I first saw that coffee shop simply when I went on a walk a while ago, like they're a newer location. And I learned of them physically by walking by. But when we're online, we don't have a physical place that people can go to. So that's why things like what you're doing with creating a strong brand and helping people be more visible and knowable and likable and consistent online is really, really important for anybody listening to this.
Yeah, because if you don't have that consistency, and a lot of times it's the pieces that we know about, but then we forget about the extra. Like, oh, wait, we can build a logo. Or this is the other one too. We spend so much time, and I'm guilty of it. I want things to be perfect. I want things to look a certain way. And I also try to give myself the excuse, well, I'm in branding. So it has to be pretty and it has to be on brand and it has to because that's the business
Mm.
I'm in. No one else is really noticing sometimes. Like, I know I put a lot of weight into it, but done is better than perfect, and people have to be able to find you. And I think at the end of the day, really what you want to be is consistent and authentic. And then the rest of it just flows. But if you're the best kept secret, then you're going to continue to be a best kept secret. You have to get out
Exactly.
there and let the world know that you exist.
Exactly. A friend of mine who also has a small business, she recently told me it's not a flex to be a well kept secret.
Oh my gosh, I like that. You've got a
It's
couple
not a
takeaways
flex.
today that I'm like, I like the way that you put it. It's not a flex to be a well-kept secret. And that's where there's a lot of power in being word of mouth. And I think still, even when you've got people who've got their branding and their marketing and all of the things, every I dotted and T crossed and everything in check, word of mouth is still going to be one of your strongest sources of referrals because it's the most trusted, right? Like if we ask a friend for advice on who to go to, that's going to weigh more than Googling or someone that you've been following on Instagram or any of the things 9 times out of 10. Now, does it mean that that can be your only source though? You need to have, and I like to tell people, I'm like, you got to have something going in every spoke of the wheel because the branding and the marketing, it's more than just one piece. So you can have a website, that's fantastic, but you also need to have a presence on social media and you also need to have or should have an email marketing campaign and you should have all the pieces because if one slows down or the algorithm changes or Google changes something and like or a new competitor comes in and starts pushing all the money into Google ad campaigns and now you kind of drop your rank. Like you have to have, and it's almost like your rainy day fund. You can have all the pieces, but you need to have other options in case one of them stops working as well. So that way you have time to troubleshoot, but then there's still people coming in from other avenues. So I think
Absolutely.
that's, I mean, it's kind, and it's not so serious, like as you like to say. It doesn't have to be serious, and a lot of it really, like now, I am in branding, and I do love a good brand photo session, even for myself. I try to get my own brand photos done about every 3 to 4 months, and I will get my hair and my makeup done, and I will work with my stylist to get my outfits picked out. And a lot of that though comes down to I just want to show up confidently on my photo session day. And so some of the things that I put into place in my photos are so that I can give myself the best leg forward to show up with the most confidence so I can be the most authentic. Because in natural every day, like I'm not really an uncomfortable, unsure person. But like if you put me in the wrong outfit and now you're trying to take my picture, you might as well just forget it. Like close the door, we're done. Like that's just not going to work. But having all those pieces. So, but then it really comes down to authenticity. And so I love to capture, like you've got a lot of personality and you keep talking about how you don't want to be stuffy and you're trying to make this fun. But if you just put finance and then everyone associates you like every other financial person, why are they going to choose you over somebody else? So you have to really differentiate yourself out there with like, this is who I am, this is what I stand for. And working with me is going to be like this. And we have so many options out there. There's
Hmm.
none of us, well, I'm sure there's somebody out there that's the only thing that they do. But for the majority, there's always another option for something that we do. So you just want to be able to have people connect with you and find you in that special manner. So going forward, what do you see happening as far as for Chillax and the future of your brand? What do you have in mind for the next 6 months to 2 years?
Yes. Well, honestly, I do want to finally tackle my email marketing. And that's not just because I just chatted about it with you, but it's good accountability because I know that it's an untapped resource. I think for me, I have held myself back because, as you were just touching on, even for yourself, it's very humanizing to hear a branding person say that even they feel anxious sometimes about their own marketing. Because for email marketing, I just feel like it has to be perfect and I don't know what to say sometimes or things like that. Whereas my website, I can just edit it at any time, or social media, I can archive a post or put another post. But email, once you send it, it's like out there and that's it. So it kind of has felt to me like, I don't know how to capture what I want to say in that way. Or I know you're supposed to have sales funnels and email segmentation and blah blah blah. So anyway, that's felt completely intimidating to me. So I at least want to have a sign up on my website and a welcome sequence and nudge some people, like you said, if they're curious but they're not immediately ready, there should be a keep in touch sort of approach. So that's something I really want to work on. Also, I'm wanting to eventually have an online course because a
Ooh.
lot of people are either really busy or they're shy or and don't want to meet with someone or talk with someone about their money, but I know that they need help. And so that's something that I've been loosely thinking about putting together. And I have a kind of a fun spin that once I'm ready, I'll try to remember to tell you about it.
Yes, please.
So, so yeah, those are some of the main marketing things I want to do and also continue to learn about SEO. Another thing that I feel like I've been decent about is asking my clients to leave Google reviews. I think a lot
Oh,
of businesses
fantastic.
don't set up their Google My Business profile, and that is a huge resource as well. So I know that that's a lot of how people have found me is through word of mouth is my number one, like you mentioned, but then also Google. So continuing to ask people to leave me reviews is a priority of mine as well over the next few years.
I love that. And then as far as like your services and all that stuff, do you see yourself adding other than the course, which I think is a phenomenal idea? Because you were right. Like I feel like there are so many people out there who want the information, but either time restraints or financial restraints or just pure like I don't want to call you and tell you what my finances are. Like I don't want to share with you what that is because that's so personal. So to open that lane to give people the opportunity to learn in a different format because I feel like there is a lot of information out there. You start to do budgets and I'm not going to lie, the idea of a budget, like I'm like, oh, gosh bless. Like no, it feels overwhelming to maintain. Like I've tried and failed numerous times at setting up budgets and living within those. But I think if you flip the script and you start to do it in a different manner, and I think if you can share that tool, that'd be amazing. But I don't
Yeah.
know. I love to see where people are going and like what they're doing and your heart. So I guess if they've been listening, Kelly, and they're like, oh my gosh, Chillax Finance sounds like somebody I definitely want to chat with because I want to get outside of this norm of stuffy and all those pieces, where can they find you?
Yes, I invite anybody listening who's curious about moving forward with their money to check me out at chillaxfinance.com or visit me on Instagram at chillaxfinance.
I love it. So chillaxfinance.com or Chillax Finance on Instagram. You can also find the links in the show notes. And any last piece of advice, like if someone's been listening and they're like, okay, so I know email marketing is a big takeaway, but something that they've been listening and you could encourage them for branding, what would it be?
For branding, I was ready to give a financial takeaway, but for
We
branding,
can
let
do
me
that
think
too.
here. Okay. For branding, I would say try to be your true self because there's just going to be so many people out there who are kind of the cliche version of whatever industry you're in. And so bringing your own authenticity to it is really what's going to help people connect to it. And so being awkward or quirky or whatever is real for you, bringing that in is going to be really helpful. For example, I'm a diehard Shakira fan. I've seen her 15 times. I'm obsessed with her. I lived in Colombia for a year and volunteered at her foundation. I met her once in 2009 in Minnesota. I could go on about a whole Shakira tangent, but because I share that with all of my clients, now anytime they see anything about her, they remember me and they're always like, oh, I want to make my money hips like Shakira's hips. I want my money to be as truthful as Shakira's hips, or they'll say like Shakira related metaphors about their money and stuff.
That's
So
awesome.
I just love that. So, I don't think most financial people are going to be like, little, lole, lole, but I am. So that makes me stick out for my clients. And so, whatever that is for your listeners, I would encourage them to bring that into their business and their brand.
Oh, thank you. Authenticity. And yes, you can't be like anybody else. You have to be yourself because it is hard to maintain this game. Entrepreneurship is hard enough. So trying to be something that you're not is not an easy feat to keep maintaining. And then I love that. And I'm so glad that Shakira came up. I was like, okay, we've got to somehow bring up the fact that you're like such a big Shakira fan. And you did. You managed to bring it in. All right. So I do want you to leave everybody with one last financial tip. You had one ready. Hopefully, so remember.
Yes, I just want to remind people that it is possible to have a healthy relationship with money. I think some people just get so used to the fact that money is inherently stressful, or that's what they believe. It has to be confusing, or it's never going to get better, or I can't have a budget, or budgets mean restriction, or whatever it is. So people have these preconceived or pre accepted notions about money, but it doesn't have to be that way. Women in the United States could not have their own credit cards or bank accounts without a man's approval until 1974. So it's understandable that most of us, at least most of the clients I work with, happen to be women, feel stressed or confused about money. And that's because historically we have not been able to manage our own money, earn our own money legally. We've needed to depend on other people for our own needs to be covered, but that's not the way it is anymore. And so I encourage people to reach out, start trying to educate yourself on money. I'm here to guide you. There's tons of other resources out there too. But just don't accept that it has to be stressful. You don't have to have debt. You can build savings. You can knock out your debt. You can have fun with your money and make it all fit together. And if you don't know how to do that on your own, that's why people like me are out here to help guide you.
Oh my, thank you. And that's shocking. 1974, really? I didn't even know. That's
Yes.
come a long way since then. But then at the same time, still not really. Like we just have so much more that we can uncover so that we can make this so fun. Well, Kelly, I really appreciate all of your time today. And thank you for anyone that's been listening. If you know of someone that could benefit from this episode, please be sure to share.